Hi, everyone, and welcome to Truth Camp. I'm your host, Crystal Giznichek, with my co-host and wife, Sarah. We believe that there is something you can learn from everyone and want to help share these truths to help inspire and motivate. Thank you for spending time with us today. Now let's get started. Welcome to our second episode of Truth Camp. I'm your host, Crystal, and this is my wife on that side, Sarah. And we have our first guest, the lovely, wonderful, sparky Brittney Oliver. And I'm going to let her introduce a little bit about what she does for a living and anything that you want to just start out to introduce yourself.
Heck yeah. Well, yep, I'm Brittney. It's great to be here. Sarah and Crystal are great in any ways that, if you know me, you know. You're welcome. I am currently an outpatient therapist here in the Steubenville area, and I have my master's in social work. I'm licensed in social work, and I'm currently on track to get my independent license within the year, which is super exciting and super stressful. But it's all worth it. I love what I do. And I'm a very boring person. I don't do much outside of work.
How long have you been working in social work?
So I graduated with my bachelor's in 2016, I believe. Yeah. And then I worked, did some case management stuff. Then I got my license in 2018 because I was like, there is nothing that I can do with just a bachelor's. Nothing.
You were overcredited. You were too much for this, not enough for this.
Yeah. I found myself being in a position where I wanted to do more, but I couldn't. So I was like, let me get my license. And I did that. And then I continued to do case management stuff. I did some drug and alcohol counseling. That was a hot mess because I worked just the company I worked for. That was a bad experience. It was a good experience too, though. I worked in a group home for girls, which was really eye-opening to some of the flaws in the system. And then I worked at CPS, which was also like a big eye-opener to the flaws in the system. And now I did my master's through the University of Southern California, and that was an amazing experience. Just learned so much through that, and now started my first big girl job, I guess you could call it, last October. My 1 year just came up a couple weeks ago, so I feel like I've dove headfirst in that experience, but I love every second of it.
You sound pretty well-rounded in it. What was you said that you that you really enjoyed the last place that you were at?
Yeah.
So what were some of the things that you really learned from that experience?
I think I try to take something out of every experience that I get involved in, as far as learning a new way of approaching a problem, or looking at how different agencies create policies and different procedures and things like that. But I really enjoy working with kids. And my last placement, well, I guess it was placement for school, but my last experience prior to my current job was at a group home for girls. And it hasn't had its ups and downs. Whoa. It was just so traumatic. I can't even find the words for it. It just, a lot of flaws in the system. A lot of people not.
What are some of the issues that you feel like if you can talk about some of that?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I look at the bigger picture, I think a lot of people look at the industry as a business, and it's let's keep these girls in this home, not helping them for as long as we can, because we get paid for as long as they're there. And it's sad because a lot of them either need a higher level of care, or they don't need to be in placement and they need to be back with their families. And so, yeah, it's a big money hungry business. And I don't know if that's fair for me to say, but it seems that way.
And it kind of muddies the waters, whenever you have money as an incentive for something.
Don't you kind of think that's like a catch-22 though? Like, you have to get money for funding. So like you kind of have to do these things that may not be in the benefit of the patient, but it's like you got to get paid. Do you think like it starts from that, or do you like think some of it starts from that, or do you think some people are just like fuckers and they're just like, yeah, we really don't care?
Yes.
Yes to all the above.
Yes to all of that. I do think that there are definitely people in this field who, you know, they want to do the best and they want to provide for the best, but it comes down to, you know, how people get their funding and, you know, like lying on progress notes, for example. That was something that we ran into at my old placement. I keep saying placement like I'm back in school, or like I was in placement. But my old position just...
Tell me you're traumatized without telling me you're traumatized.
Seriously, yeah. Bingo. And even now, like in my current position as an outpatient therapist, there are people there who have been in therapy for like 20 plus years. And it's, instead of trying to help these people, it is, you know, how long can we keep you in therapy, and how long can we bill your insurance and get money from you? And it's become a very, like creating a dependency and enabling these people not to make changes. That's the biggest thing that keeps coming up for me and what I keep realizing. So
do you think like there are people that, I mean, do you see the polarity in the people that go to therapy for like their victimized mindset? Like they're, you know, just coddling that? And like how many people do you see that actually really truly want to change and like get help? And where does that line kind of blur?
I would say it really depends, and I hate saying like it depends, because but it really does. I think this area, there's a lot of things that are not, they're related to mental health, but they're not like just depression or anxiety. It's poverty, it's a housing issue, it's a lack of resources, it's lack of access to basic needs, you know, and so I get that piece. You know, when you're trying to work on depression and anxiety, but that's caused by not having a consistent income or trying to survive off of your disability check. That's hard.
Survival, just like in general, when you don't have that security of just your basic like needs and you're having to worry about that constantly, like sometimes you're not thinking about how important the other things that you're experiencing
for sure. Yeah, when you're trying to make ends meet every month, or you're trying to budget on $700 and some change a month, you don't have the time or the space to set boundaries with people or to improve your communication skills. So on one hand, I do see where people need ongoing services. But I do think that if the agencies in this area would come together and work together instead of one person dealing with 5 different agencies and none of them communicating, like I think a lot of change could be like positive change.
What are you talking about? That's how Steubenville functions. What do you mean? That's
Listen,
That's Ohio Valley Care right there.
Yeah, it's the top-notch care.
Yeah, that's right. I'm slandering that all right. Because I feel like I see it, and I've like heard stories, and I've firsthand had some times where it's like, oh, you think you're gonna get some help, and like, oh, this money's there, and like the state puts it there, and here's what you have to do to get it, and like you can't help but feel really sorry for the people that get like stuck in it, because it's just this continual roll downhill of shit. And I feel like it just keeps you just enough, like just enough to keep going. And like you just have to keep grasping at straws. And I think when people, the vast majority of people are gonna be like, oh, these people that seek this help and the state run this and that, like they're just lazy, they're just this and that. And really, like, they're not. They're trapped in a system that is really not equipped to handle them, and it's equipped to just like make money off of their state funded insurance.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're spot on there. I know, like, I don't know when this is, it's going to be within a year. And this is just information that I've got from work, is that insurances and things are changing, which I think it's going to be a shit show when it does. It's going to limit the amount of sessions people can have a year. So, you know, people who are used to coming to therapy weekly, especially people who have like complex issues. It's not just depression. It's not just anxiety. It's not just like situational stuff. It goes back to the economy of this area and just the different issues. And I think that that's going to create a lot of roadblocks for a lot of people, to say the least.
I'm sorry to jump in. How is the insurance actually going to change?
So from my understanding, that they're going to limit the amount of sessions people can have per year. So I think that they were looking at 26 sessions a year. Yeah.
And that's nationwide or just Ohio based?
That's Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's going to be like Medicaid and Medicare. I don't know how commercial insurance is going to operate, because I know like the funding for that is completely different. But looking at very limited sessions, getting people in, getting people out, and then for like emergency cases, extending it to 32 sessions a year.
Oh my God.
So,
Wait, you forgot to mention the part where you wait like literally 6 weeks to even get someone to call you back to maybe get you scheduled.
yeah.
And then running the gamut of like finding a therapist that doesn't fall asleep during your session or forgets who you are, so they have to reread everything, or just sits there and goes, and how does that make you feel?
Oh, listen,
like I
was
want to
like-
fucking stab at you in your face. That's how it makes me fucking feel.
I had a therapist like that once, and I think I went to her 3 times, and I was like, okay, I'm done telling you how it makes me feel. Don't ask me that question again. But yeah, I do think that it right now, especially with how things have been in our world for the past year and a half, 2 years coming up, I think a lot of people are burnt out. They have like compassion fatigue. They are not caring anymore because I know like a couple agencies in the area, they have like 2 therapists working, but they have like a caseload of like a bajillion. So that's like, how's that possible? But yeah, no, you're right. There's definitely a wait list. There's a possibility that you'll be assigned to someone who is not a right match for you or who doesn't specialize in your needs. And that definitely creates a lot of barriers for people getting the services that they need so that they can get in and out of therapy.
So let me ask you this, like as someone who is providing as a service provider, what would you say is beneficial for someone seeking counseling or therapy? Like what are some things that you think are really important for them to lock down in their service provider to help them feel like this is a good match? Like, are there questions that they should be asking or credentials they should be looking for? Like, what do you think is important to find that match that's going to actually help?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. I think for me, I think all therapists, they operate differently, but I make sure to incorporate this into my first session when I'm going over, confidentiality and, HIPAA and mandated reporting laws and all that fun stuff. I ask them, like, what are your expectations of me? What are your expectations of therapy? Are there specific things that you need to work on? Like, is it grief that you need to address first? How do you prefer for me to approach these sessions? I also am like, I tell my clients, like, this is a safe space for you to ask me anything. I don't care if it's about like what kind of like soda I like to drink, but like ask me anything. So I just try to set the tone to let them know, like, hey, this is for you. Like, you can talk about anything. You can open up about anything. If you have questions about my experience, if you have questions about my licensure level, if you have questions about where I specialize at, I try to make it as informal in that first session just to build that comfort level. And I don't have strict laws in my therapy room. Like, it's very laid back.
And you set that expectation bar too, which I think is super important.
Have you ever been asked a question like that by any therapist you've seen? I know you love your current therapist, but I have never been asked a question like that. Like, what are your expectations?
I think what makes that easier for me, because I too have gone into therapy, for a lot of years. Well, not consecutively, but I have been
off and on.
Yes. And My biggest thing is I've been to several female therapists and they just weren't good matches for me, but I finally found the right match for me, and that has been like a huge game changer. So I think it's just a matter of, and that's okay. I think a lot of people have a difficult time like self-advocating and being worried about hurting someone's feelings, but it's not about the therapist at all. Like, we get that sometimes it's not a good match. But
and I think a lot of people do. Like, I've been through a few different therapists, and it took me like 4 or 5 just to find one that I actually click with.
Mm-hmm.
What would you suggest for people? Because I'm sure a lot of people struggle with that. Like, what advice would you give, like, for someone who's struggling finding that match?
I think an important piece for me, at least, if I'm feeling heard and I'm feeling understood and I'm feeling like the person isn't trying to like rush me along or
like looking at their watch, like, oh,
yeah,
okay, just checking
yeah.
out the time.
Didn't you have someone do that to you, or like yawn or something?
Oh yeah, she fucking yawned during our session, and I was just like, I was done.
I would have been like, am I boring you?
No, I like think I walked out and I was just like, yeah, I'm fucking done.
Yeah.
Like,
I remember when you came in the
done.
car,
Like,
I
if
was
you're
like,
gonna
what's
yawn,
wrong?
and it wasn't
first
like
yawn.
it's not like we're sitting there like just staring at each other. She's like, tell me about your life, and I'm like, this, and like the shit that I'm telling her, like, if you're fucking yawning, like, bitch, I know you're not fucking paying attention.
Yeah, no,
straight up,
not
you're not
at
paying
all.
attention.
Not at all.
And I'm like, yeah, clearly you're overworked, and I just fucking paid you $135 to sit here for an hour for you to
yawn at me.
yawn. Wow. Yeah. So I know I talk to a lot of people, and that's what they'll say. They're like, I just don't even have any desire to go to therapy. Like, I don't want to, like, you get
And
really
I think that's
discouraged.
sad though too, because then it like makes people not want to go because they think like, well, this is just a bunch of bullcrap.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
for sure.
I mean, you guys are super overworked,
Yeah.
super underpaid, and then you have a
That's
giant
refreshing.
agency over you that's like, can't do that.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you have 67 other cases. You need to not worry about this one.
Yeah, that's kind of where it falls in with everything, and it's again, it's so maybe I'm not going to knock the place that I work at,
Well,
but
no, I mean, you can't. It's the system.
The system.
yeah, it is. I think it depends on like profit and then non-profit and for profit and all that, and yeah, it does come down to how much money can we make off this person.
Is there any changes that you could see that like you think would make a bigger impact that they could do? Like, what do you think are like some of the bigger gaps that you think could be like maybe even easily tackled that aren't?
I think so. It goes back to, again, we do have a lot of resources in this area, but nobody wants to communicate. So if CPS and juvenile justice and I don't know, those were the first 2 that came to my mind, right? Because I have experience with them. But if like the food bank and the CAC and, everyone kind of came together and worked as a whole instead of very separate entities, we could probably tackle so many more issues. There's a lot of people who have case management needs, but they also need therapy. So if a case manager and a therapist and this agency and this agency and this agency were having like a consultation on a person, I think that a lot more people would have their needs met rather than me providing a service and them providing a service and then another person providing a service and then everyone doing their own thing but not communicating as a whole to better provide for this individual.
That sounds like a really great idea that no one will ever listen to. Not to be Debbie Downer or anything, but there's someone at the head of an agency right now like, I'm not going to listen to what Susan has to say.
Oh, for sure. And that's, even as a therapist that has to network and reach out to make an appropriate referral or to provide something that I can't, because I can't do it all. And I think that it's very important that I say when that is something that I can't provide or that so when I call and ask for a referral, like, people are just dicks.
Yeah, sure.
Just super nasty and burnt out.
How many referrals? I'll put you on the list. But there's like 50 other referrals ahead of you.
Not even kidding. I had a conversation I had last week. I had to do an emergency hospitalization, and the person was like, I have nothing to do with that. Why are you calling me? And I said, well, I kind of need your assistance because your agency takes care of this stuff. And then instead of her calling her supervisor, she said, here's my supervisor's number. You can call them. And I'm like, okay, let me just do your job.
Like, I don't get paid enough for this.
No, not at all. Not at all. So.
Did you think it would be as stressful as it is, like going into it? Or I guess too, on the other side of it, what made you want to get into this?
Well, let me start with the easier question. I knew forever. Well, I mean, so like even back in when I was a kid, like, you know how everyone's like, I want to be a teacher and like, I want to do this. So that was like my first career path. I was like, I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be a cool ass teacher. And then I went through my own shit and I like immediately knew like I want to provide help for people, do things for people that I needed. And maybe that's a little like, is that wrong of me to choose my career path based off of the things that I needed as a kid?
No, I mean, I think maybe a lot of us do that in one way or another. I mean, I think everybody does that. In your relationships, you might do it. You might do it with your work. You might do it with your friend group. I mean, I feel like that's how everybody kind of ends up where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, you navigated through it on your own, or, you know, maybe with help. But once you get to the other side, you're like, okay, I made it. So like, I'm going to try to help some other people at the same time.
I always knew I wanted to help. It started like very ambitious though. You know, I was like, I'm going to be a doctor.
I remember when you started out, you were like just full of piss and vinegar. Like, I'm getting through this. I'm doing this. Like,
yeah, biology major was my freshman year of college choice. And then you all know what happened from there. I was set free from my cage of a home and shit hit the fan. Do
you want to talk a little bit about your
yeah,
college
dude, I am an open book
experience and kind of give like a little background, like just, you know,
an overview,
brief synopsis.
Buckle
of
up,
that.
kids.
Vroom, vroom.
Yeah. I think a lot of, so I definitely come from like a stricter household, and I was very much, I don't want to say controlled, but there were a lot of rules that I had to follow, a lot of things that were expected of me when I was living at home. I struggled with my own mental health then, and when I turned 18 and was out of school, like, the drugs and the alcohol were nonstop. I would say like the sex addiction, that's a thing. And I'm very honest and open about that, because a lot of the things that I've been through has got me to where I'm at right now. And I think I needed to go through those things to realize like, hey, there's more out there for you than what you're doing. But yeah, so I went to WVU and party school, and did anything and everything you could possibly imagine. I lasted there for half a semester, and I dropped out. I experienced some not so pleasant things, which then caused me to spiral. And then I came home and I went to Franciscan for a semester, and then I went back to WVU for a semester. It gets better, guys. It takes a while to get there. But
that's sophomore year?
Yeah, so now we're into sophomore year, back at WVU for the fall semester. Then I go to Kent State for the spring semester. And then I get back to WVU, and I'm like, one more time. Let's give it one more time. And every time I went back, it was like an addiction. Honestly, like Morgantown was an addiction for me. There was a lot of, I had access to everything I wanted. And, well, everything I thought I needed and wanted. But it was more so like a coping thing, trying to suppress. And a lot of bad things happened along the way. And then I finally was like, okay, this is enough, Brittney. Like, enough is enough. You can't put yourself through more. Like, your family's done with you. So I finished up my, my undergrad at Franciscan University.
Was there something in that like turning point that caused you to like kind of shift, or?
Hell yeah, there was. Dr. Gillum. I know you won't listen to this. But
Shout out Dr. Gillum.
yeah, listen, that woman, I will like put her name on my gravestone one day, because I had a conversation with her, and I was very vulnerable with her and told her like, this is what's going on. And she was like, just come get your undergrad in social work. Like, that's where most of your credits are. So just do this, it will get you through it. And that was even tough. I continued to struggle with my mental health, even at home with like a safe environment and like support. That was even tough. I struggled with some suicide stuff, continued to use drugs and drinking as a coping mechanism. Experienced some sexual trauma and stuff like that, and then I graduated and was like, okay, I can do this. And then I really don't know when that, I think just the idea of me succeeding and being like, I did something. I did this on my own. I was in this position for I guess more than a semester, since that was like my track record. So I did 3 semesters at Franciscan, and I made it through. And after I graduated, that's when I decided I was going to, I completely forgot that I was in a school at one point. Like for work, that was my first big girl job. I was in a school.
You loved that
I
job.
did.
I know you loved that job. I'm still like so sad that that's a position that you can't be in, because I know like I love my guidance counselors. Like when you have a good guidance counselor, that's like everything.
Yeah. I think that was the job. So forget everything I said earlier, guys. That was the job
It'll
where
jog your memory a little bit.
Yeah, it took me a while. That was the job when I was like, I need to get my license to do more, because like the school was so fixated on their data, on their paper. Like that does not dictate how your school's mental health culture is and climate is, like at all. You can have kids who get straight A's, but if they are not mentally well, like that's not going to mean anything in the future. So the thing that really turned me off from the school is it was Suicide Prevention Month, and I took, I'm kid you not, 2.5 hours putting together this bulletin of resources, of like the suicide hotline, the text number, resources here. Came back to school the next day and it was torn down. And then the principal was like, we don't talk about that here. I'm like, why? You had a kid try to kill themselves last week. Like, what are you doing or not doing?
What?
Yeah. So then I was like, yeah, peace out, Girl Scout. I am on to something else so I can make a difference. And now I'm here. And I feel like I'm kind of making a difference, trying to.
Well, I think like you coming, like even though like you had some negative experiences, like just being able to relate with some of the like people you see too, that makes you so much better a therapist, I'm sure. Like just having that understanding and not just like judging them for what they are doing or.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that any client could present to me that would just make me be like, what? Like, I get it. There's a lot of times when I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like, it sucks and it's hard. And sometimes it's okay to just feel sad. It's okay to just sit and be sad.
Like, do you see, like, generationally, because I'm sure you see clients different age brackets, even though I know, like, primarily with kids now, do you see like a glimmer of hope for like younger generations, since like mental health is something that we talk about so much more, and there is so much more openness, it seems like, with the younger generation? Like, do you think that they will have set themselves up a little bit better than like, say, our generation?
I think so. This is what I see. So if you think about it, trauma starts, and I think a lot of people in this area are experiencing, like, maybe not like, I think when people think of trauma, they think of like a near-death experience or like a brutal situation, like a rape or, seeing domestic violence or being abused in some way. But there is so much more, like emotional damage and wounds are traumatic experiences for people. Having an absent parent in the home is a trauma, not having access to resources, which is this entire area. Those are just like complex trauma, and they just pile and pile and pile, and trauma starts in like your grandma's womb. Like it does, and I don't think anyone thinks about that stuff. So grandparents traumatize, like unintentionally traumatize their kids, which then they traumatize their kids. And I think that we are starting to see like these things are starting to make way to the surface, but a lot of my kids that I work with, it's their parents that struggle to like get past that piece and realize like you can't yell at your kid before they go to school or go to bed and expect them to wake up and be okay or go to school and function. So a lot of it is a bunch of just traumatized people walking around like feeling empty and going to other people for, you know, trying to fill that void, and then they end up hurting people, and then those hurt people, and it's just like we're just a bunch of traumatized people walking around hurting each other, traumatizing each other more sometimes.
And like our parents' generation, I mean, they're the ones that are like, what do you have to be so upset about? Like, you have everything. It's
I hate that.
nowhere near as bad, and you
like
have
downplaying
no idea.
the trauma, like that's just how it was.
I mean, like 10 years ago, I probably would have been like,
suck it up.
you know, yeah, like that's not even like really that traumatic, but like you realize that, like the analogy I always use to people, I'm like, me and you could both fall down the steps and like it could like fuck your world up and do absolutely nothing to me. And that could be the most traumatic moment of your life.
And that doesn't make either person
No, it doesn't.
wrong
Yeah,
either.
it doesn't invalidate it. But you're never taught. Well, we were never taught that like your feelings are valid. You're upset about this. Like, let's de-escalate. It was like, do you want to fucking cry? I'm going to give you something to cry about.
Yeah.
Like, what's the sense of crying? Suck it up. Like, you know, and you're like, okay.
And we were just saying about how like it's so weird to us when we see good examples, we're like taken back and like, how can that kid talk to their mom about that? Like,
Yeah, or like, oh my God, like,
Like,
this
oh.
family like touches, they hug. Yeah. They're like actually nice. They're not like backstabbing each other. Like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah. That's my biggest, like, I make that like my child of therapy. I'm like, you're going to learn how to communicate with your kid. And that's, when I work with my kids, it's not working with my kids, it's working with their parents and retraining how they parent them and retraining how they teach them how to communicate and express their feelings and, you know, validating their feelings. And so I very much enjoy that. But I also try to remind parents, like, I do truly believe that at least like 95% of parents, they do the best that they can with the resources that they have and what they were given by their parents. And those who don't have those abilities I just make sure to like focus in on those a lot, like communication, conflict resolution, de-escalation skills, you know, identifying the emotion. You can't communicate if you don't know what sadness or loneliness or anger feels like. So
I saw this like poster and it was like, do you ever see it? It's like a big circle. It was like a pie chart of like all the different emotions and then
there's
like
a name
sub
for it.
emotions.
oh yes,
Dude, it is insane because like, you know, out of fear, then there's all these little subgroups, and out of guilt, there's all these different subgroups, and it's like every freaking school should be teaching this.
It's like the wheel of
these-
emotions or
Yes,
something.
and
I think I almost got
yeah.
a pillow that had that on
It's
it.
insane because there's some emotions on it you're like, I didn't even know that was a feeling. Like,
what?
I did have a quick question just because I feel like I see some kids take advantage of parents who try to communicate correctly and they don't listen or they play it to their advantage. And so I feel like figuring out how to communicate correctly with your child while also having some sense of discipline in there, like what would be your advice for that?
Oh, that's a good question. I think understanding why, why is that kid being so, I don't want to say like avoidant of that healthy communication, but just understanding both sides of the situation, understanding where the kid is coming from and why they're having a hard time accepting that communication. And kids are complicated. Like, I really do feel like I don't want to say they have it rough, but they have access to social media that has just like some unhealthy things on it. A lot. Sorry, excuse me. A lot of unhealthy things in it.
And I'm sure that's situational too. That's probably kind of like each case is so different.
Yeah. So yeah, I just, a lot of what I do is observe at first. Like I'll just have a kid and their parent come in and just observe them to like communicating with each other. And then I give my observation, and then I'm like, this is unhealthy. Like you communicating with your mom like this is unhealthy, or you thinking that you deserve everything under the sun is not accurate. But sometimes that doesn't even, like therapy sessions don't even get to that point because some parents are just so over it that they don't want to make changes, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, it definitely did to an extent. I know personally of a situation where somebody tries to communicate very, very much like you're describing. Like they try to say, okay, why are you feeling this way? Or tell me what you're feeling and stuff like that. And it just seems like sometimes they take advantage of it. And I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. They basically end up just throwing tantrums all the time to get their way.
Yeah, you'll get that. I think that goes back to a lack of like regulation abilities, like not understanding why they're having a reaction to that in whatever way, and then not knowing how to calm their nervous system. And that's where it all starts, honestly. Like being able to regulate your nervous system and being able to get yourself in a calm state of mind so that you can fully understand, like, where am I feeling this? Why am I feeling this? And what do I need to do to like regulate?
Like at what point do you step in and say like, this is the distinction between like this kid just being either a spoiled brat or manipulative, or is there a mental health issue where like, when can you differentiate between the two? Because some kids are manipulative.
Oh, hell yeah.
Like super manipulative.
Yeah.
Kids learn that from a really young age. I mean, whether it's like a survival mechanism or you're just a spoiled little shit, versus, you can't regulate your emotions because this kid's borderline. Like when do you start to notice those things, and what's the distinction?
This goes back to my annoyance with the insurance company is, you get 1 hour to assess an individual and you're having to give it a diagnosis. When all through grad school they're like, don't diagnose on the first session, like don't do it, and insurance is like, just kidding. So that when it comes to like a conceptualizing a case, it's like I'll give the smallest diagnosis when I do an assessment. Like everyone either gets like an unspecified anxiety disorder at first, or like
generalized anxiety.
Yes.
Depression.
And then I assess for like 4 more sessions afterward. And that is like fact gathering, not only from parents, but grandparents, teachers, peers. Well, not really peers. You can't really be like, hey, tell me about little Jimmy. You can't do that. It'd be kind of cool. You'd probably get a lot of information.
Yeah, why is your friend a dick?
Yeah. But just fact gathering, gaining a full picture and understanding of patterns in family history and family dynamics, and that's harder for my adults because, the older that they are, the less likely they are to want someone involved in their therapy. So it's based off of what they tell me and how they present it. There's this cool thing that I learned. It's called Johari's window. I think I'm saying that correct. I don't know. But it's basically that every person has like 4 parts to them. And it is the scene. So those are things that you can observe in a person. The known, the things that people present to you. The hidden, which things that people keep to themselves. And then the unknown, which are the pieces that are like tucked deep into your subconscious that nobody knows about. So, but if you think, like, if you look at, even if you do like a quick like internal reflection of yourself, you could be like, yeah, there's things that I haven't told anybody. Or you can be like, well, I've told like somebody, but not many people. But we all have pieces to ourselves that we hide from other people. So there's a lot that goes into identifying like diagnoses. And
I feel like there's so many diagnoses that like overlap one another, and
oh God, yes.
I mean, they almost all do, it seems like. Or like, was this inherent, congenital? Did an event set this off? Was it, drugs and alcohol that turned it this way? Is it a defense mechanism, or like, where does this stem from? And like, so I think it's so easy too to just throw out a diagnosis.
Oh, hell yeah.
And just be like, you're definitely borderline.
Yeah.
Like, that is such a hard thing to target and like narrow down to, that, I mean, you could like ruin someone with a diagnosis. Like,
yeah, personal experience. I had someone diagnose me with borderline, and I was like, what? Like, I looked at all, and she was like, you've done this. And I'm like, no, I think I got a little upset because I have like abandonment problems, but I don't think that I'm like borderline or anything.
Yeah, like, what if it's just, I really truly believe there are some people that are just like born that way. Like, there's some issues with brain development, but like, you look up the definition of borderline personality disorder, and every single person has exhibited those traits at some point in time in their life. So until you meet a person who really truly is borderline, because you don't think they're borderline when you meet a borderline person, you have absolutely no fucking clue.
They don't think they are.
But I think that's really damaging too, when you throw out a random diagnosis and it's basically like just throwing a dart at a board, and like, what happens if someone like really goes off in the fucking deep end? Like,
that, when I present, because I like to educate my clients too, and letting them know, like, this is based off of observations that I have seen and information that I have collected. This is your diagnosis, but I don't ever say, like, do not look at this as a label. This is a roadmap so that we can get you to where you're at, to where you want to be. And I think that is important to identify and even acknowledge to a client, because there is like a negative stigma on having a very severe mental illness. I think a lot of like personality disorders stem from trauma. But I don't think that every person who has experienced trauma in their life is going to have a personality disorder. Yeah. Like, there are so many, like, even under the trauma spectrum, I have been on a severe reactions to stress diagnosis, because it really is. A lot of people have been under a lot of stress for a long period of time, and that's like equivalent to an unspecified like trauma diagnosis. So I think that jumping to the worst case scenario is not helpful at all, but fully understanding a person is important.
And like, what would you say to people who are like, this whole like, it's a sissy culture and everybody has something wrong, we all have to talk about our feelings, and like, they don't believe that traumas are valid?
Oh, fuck that noise, seriously. I cannot stand that. I think that what's happening is people are starting to realize that you can talk about these things, and that these things are real, and that just because mom and dad and everyone else said that they're not valid, or that, don't be sad about this, or, get over it, move on.
Here's my other personal favorite. Like, when you talk about things openly, and then people are like, oh my God, they just want attention.
Yeah. Oh,
they just want attention.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't get me started on that.
You know I'm gonna.
Yes. I have a special pen in my office where I like stab myself in the eyes when people say, oh, that looked wrong. But when parents are like, this is attention seeking, which, don't get me wrong, sometimes it is. But
why are they seeking that attention?
Yes. This person is seeking attention from.
And I think some of the older generations, they feel like they weren't able to be heard, so like that's why you sometimes
I want to be
get
like,
that push.
Jim, you are severely traumatized. Severely. Like, whoa, my dad used to beat us with belts. Yeah, that's called child abuse.
Yeah.
That's trauma. Like,
but it shaped me into the man I am today.
I go out back and I drink a 24-pack of Budweiser.
I don't need to talk about feelings.
Deal with my feelings.
Yeah,
like,
that's a thing.
I mean, that's fine. Like, that's cool too. But yeah, I hate when people say it's just trauma. Everybody has trauma. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, that's why I feel like that is, like, those responses are why people just don't talk about their problems. Because
you talk about it, and you're attention seeking and you don't talk about it, and then like you react and then you're fucking crazy. And there's like no happy medium. Or like when you do talk about it and then it becomes your whole personality.
Yeah. I think something that I've like taken away from like this past year of me really working on myself is that working on your mental health is a very isolated thing. I think that you need to be able to really look at yourself and reflect on your reactions to things, because there's a difference between reacting to something and responding to something. A reaction is very impulsive, and those are the things that you need to pay attention to, because those are the things that you still need to work on. When you start to respond to people, that's more thoughtful. You stop and you're like, okay, this person's probably projecting their like shit onto me, like it has nothing to do with me. I'm gonna just take a breath and I'm gonna just take a little step back here.
That pause.
Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna be working on that for like the rest of my life.
It happens.
How many times have you seen me like which like we'll go back and say like, how long have I known you?
Oh geez. Okay, so Sarah started cutting my hair when I was like 9 or 10.
Don't age me.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry.
Just joking.
I didn't even know it was that
I
long.
was what, like I was probably 19.
You were working at
We won't say the name, but yep.
Yes.
That's where I was.
I can't remember the name, so
I know the name.
I don't remember.
Well, yeah, because it was your gran, and then meeting you and following you like all the way through like middle school, high school, college, and then we got like, you know, that age gap just kind of doesn't matter as much anymore. And I think we got like real close when you were like down WVU.
Yeah, I told you, I was like, oh, Sarah will understand me. She'll listen to me.
Fuck yeah, I'll understand, because I'm back here partying my ass off while you're down there partying your ass off.
I know.
Like squirrel brain, but like I want to deviate and like kind of talk about like the whole breath work.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, like, with being in a stressful job, like, how do you manage your stress, and like, what are some things that you found helpful to like kind of keep that down and not affect you so much with work?
The food and Netflix. So for me, a big piece has been breath work. I try to go as often as possible, but that has really allowed me to gain a better understanding of the things that I hold in. And it's on top of doing like intensive trauma therapy for the past year while incorporating that in, like that has been game changers for me.
Do you like lay there in breath work sometimes and like have these epiphanies where you're like, oh, or like a couple days after you're like, like that's what that is.
Yeah. My phone, I won't share those things with you, but I keep a running note of things that come up for me, and then I set an intention in my breathwork class. Then I'm like, okay, it makes sense. I'm not crazy. Makes sense.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's just like opened up that a lot of the stuff that I struggle with, it doesn't belong to me, and it's just a matter of, I think before breathwork, I had this like visual in my mind that I had to have like these intense conversations with my parents to get over things, and a lot of it has just been deeply reflecting on those things and returning it back to who it comes from. Like, return it to the sender. It's not yours. And that has been like, I've like forgiven my mom. I've kind of forgiven my dad. Working on it. Without even having like conversations with them. It's more so accepting that these people are the way that they are, and I can't do anything about that except for work on how I respond to those things.
Yeah, that's tough. That's real tough.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard to look at your parents too and be like, all right, we're at the age that we are and we have all this shit, and then our parents had kids on top of dealing with shit.
Yeah.
And then it kind of, I mean, I know for me anyway, it makes me have a lot more empathy, because I'm like, oh, they were dealing with all of that shit plus me, plus everyday life. And then you are a little more gentle with it, because it's like, well, you did the best you could with what you had at the time.
I didn't always think that way, though.
Oh, hell no. Me neither. How many conversations have we had that
Yeah.
Oof.
I think the biggest thing, like, just to give a little bit of insight on like personal experience, I used to like despise my mom. I was like, you abandoned me when I was 10 and fuck you, Mom. Like, you moved to Florida. And I knew why she moved to Florida. And now, like, my adult brain kind of kicks in and I'm like, oh, that's right. You were in an abusive relationship and you were being traumatized in your relationship and you were trying to protect me and my sister and my brothers, I guess. Yeah, Zach was kind of there. And trying to take care of yourself, but also being very controlled by this monster. And as I accepted those things and pulled away from my mom left me when I needed her the most, that's been a huge, huge piece of just like accepting and moving forward, learning how to live with the stuff that I've been through. So.
I noticed like you and your mom, like I know you've worked really hard on your relationship with her, especially in like the past few years. And like I noticed that you guys have a way better, like a way healthier relationship. And I think your mom has kind of like relaxed a little bit too, or she's not so like overcompensating for your like attention and affections and like like she's like settled a little bit where you guys can enjoy one another.
Yeah, for sure. I would say like within the past year, like major changes in those relationships. Just I think that she does still hold a lot of guilt. She does, like, just with her like behaviors and her mannerisms and the thing, like she does still overcompensate at times, but I don't take it as like, oh my God, Mom, you're so annoying. Like it's I get it. Like I'm sure that you feel an immense amount of guilt, or that you feel grief too, because you missed out on a lot. I mean, from 10, I'm 29 now. That's a lot of years where you just, didn't, where I pushed you away. I'll say that, where I pushed her away. And so I try to be understanding of that piece.
Do you ever find it hard too, because like you're in a unique position where like not only are you trying to like heal yourself and better yourself, but like you're a care provider, and then like you are also in a role where your emotional maturity has like surpassed your parents.
Oh, hell yeah. I think that I get like emotional thinking about that a little bit, because I am just looking at all of the things that all the generational things that I have broken, and it makes me so fucking happy to know that I'm going to be able to create and make a family one day that I didn't have. And it makes me feel so great to just know that I'm not going to put my kids through what I went through. And those, like, that makes it all worth it. Like the crying in the bathroom floor at like 2:30 in the morning, like, oh, I fucking hate my life, like this sucks. It's worth it.
Yeah, and you're like you have always kind of been like the little rebel.
Oh,
like,
hell yeah,
of your
till the day I die. Yeah.
But like that is, I think, any black sheep in the family, any like rebellious one in the family, like you are the one that like you're going against the grain, like you're just not going to conform. And I feel like it is up to that person to like embrace that, be that black sheep, like fix your shit. Like it's cool. Like if you see a family dynamic that is not fucking healthy, you need to change it. And it's not just like, oh, I know you'll hate this phrase, family blood is thicker than water.
Get out of here.
Like,
yeah. I think there's a lot of pushback from my family. They still see like the spiraling version of myself. I mean, I will give it to them. I would bite your head off in an instant. Just be like defensive and cuss you out, and then be like, why aren't you mad at me? Like, don't be mad at me.
What's crazy though is like, again, back to like emotional maturity, not to cut you off, I totally forgot about
You're
this.
good, I don't care.
You, like, no one in your family, aside from, I really feel like your sister has always been there, like emotionally mature, but like she doesn't really speak out, but like you're like freaking crying out for help, and your whole family is just emotionally not mature enough to handle that. Yeah,
you're right. I think that's not mine. That's not my problem anymore. That's like, I have become very comfortable with helping myself, because I can't depend on people like I used to. If I depend and wait around for everyone, I'm never going to be where I want to be. But if I got my back, like, I'll never be lonely. I gotta have my, gotta handle my own. But yeah, that has been a big thing that I've accepted this year, that I can't depend on anyone. Well, I don't want to say I can't depend on anybody, but I have to be there for myself and accept that the people that I want to be there aren't always going to be there.
Do you think we also, too, like, culturally get hung up on this idea of, like, I guess it is a pretty toxic thing to think, like, you're family. You rely on family, and family is family, and we're here to support you. And, like, you can't turn your back on family, when really I think they're the ones that can do the most damage.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And like, I know, like, we talk about it all the time. We're like, and not like that we don't love our family and shit like that, whatever. But it's like our friend group, it is more like family.
Support,
like it's a better support system. And I don't know if it's just because they, get to see us for how we are, and maybe when you're in family, it's like you're remembered a certain way.
Yeah.
And you're always viewed as like spiraling Brittney, and like, so they're never going to see you as the person that you are. But your friends, like, they grow and they evolve with you. Because we talk about that all the time. We're like, we're so happy with our friend group right now because everybody's like in
working
a good
on
place.
themselves.
But also too, how fucked up is it when you're like doing the work and then there's friends that just relationships that you want them to come with you,
but you can't.
Man, don't get me started on this. Shit, that's been my entire year. Yeah. No, you're right on track there. There are going to be people that you outgrow, and relationships that are going to outgrow. If I don't, there are going to be people in your life that will either grow with you and work on things with you, or they're going to be stuck and content, and you're going to outgrow and move forward. And then that's when things get dicey and spicy.
And I feel like it's okay. Like, some people in this life, they're just not meant to evolve past that, or like there's things they have to get there on their own, and it's not like wrong or right. It's just you can't pull everybody with you. Yeah. And it sucks when you have to leave people, but it's crazy how you can really, really outgrow people.
Yeah, that's for sure. You can. It's a thing. I think that when you start to be very vulnerable and true to yourself, like, that's when the real people stay by your side. And that's when you realize, like, oh, I have been staying with this person because it, like, does something for me, or it fills a void. But it's like, I don't need that void filled anymore. And I realized that I was using you for my own betterment, and that's not fair. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I think with, like, when I had a different perspective, I think with you, I felt like I kind of think of myself like I'm whole, and you add value to my life.
Yes.
Like, you're not, I don't need you. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I want you. And that's a different type of relationship when you want to be with someone versus needing to
like,
be
if that
with someone.
person walks away, like, not that you want that to happen, but like your whole world doesn't come to like a grinding halt because you're so codependent.
And we built that trust too. It's not like we want to be away from each other, but like we can be away from each other healthily and not like.
It's amazing.
Wow, that can happen.
It can happen.
It's a real thing.
Yeah, it's a real thing. You can actually like the person that you're with.
Yeah. So crazy. I have no ill will towards this person at all, but things happen.
And I mean, that's not to say people can't like come back around, but I think too, like, it's a toxic pattern in relationships where you think you have to stay. Like, I've invested all this time, so now I have to stay, or I don't want to hurt this person, so I'm gonna hurt myself and I'm gonna stay. And then
that's a big thing.
You catch the backlash from your family that, they tell you what a piece of shit and a horrible person you are because God forbid you break up with this person who the sun shines out of their ass. So much fun. So much fun. I know you know all about that. Unfortunately.
Yeah. That is on the back burner for tonight, folks.
We're gonna push that. We're gonna just slide that over there.
Yeah.
Like, let it go.
Yeah.
So is there any other like things besides breath work that you like that helps you like kind of how you said about how everything's controlled with your central nervous system, and that's like a big thing, learning like deregulation techniques. Like what are some things that help you besides breath work?
I think that self-care in general is self-care in general is important. I'm a big sucker for like hot baths, showers.
Me too. I'm a bath person too. I love it.
Yeah. I live a very boring life right now. Like very boring. I used to work out. I think I'm giving myself the space to just relax and be, not setting like crazy expectations for myself, and just allowing myself to be like, you're not overworked. Yeah, I'm overworked at work.
Yeah.
Let me just say it how it is. And
You've done a lot of personal work.
Yes.
And that is mentally so taxing. And yeah, I definitely think you deserve, because I mean, I've just for the past year, it's like you're like, I gotta do more, I gotta do that, like you're just dig through, like now you kind of just like chill for a minute.
yeah, and it's nice. I think I need it, just to kind of like reset a little bit. So
Well, we're coming to a close, and this time went by super fast.
It did.
But I want to start asking our guests a question at the end.
Ooh.
So the question that I have for you, and you can say like anything, it doesn't have to be the most significant experience, but I want you to say one experience that changed your life and like how you overcame that.
Oh, darn. Which one do I pick? I would have to say, so I know this is kind of on topic with what we're talking about. I think the biggest game changer for me is me engaging fully in my therapy, taking it seriously, being open and honest, being vulnerable, and admitting like, this is where you fuck up and this is where you contribute to your own problems, Brittney. Like, it's not everyone else's fault. Like, sometimes it's you. A lot of the times it's you.
Being real with yourself.
Yeah. That this whole year has just been a changer for me. Identifying where I fuck up, identifying my patterns, just being open. So I would say like that. Just being vulnerable to myself and to other people has been. I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. Here I am.
I love that. That's great.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to do some ASMR?
Yeah, we were doing ASMR before that.
It really makes me drag your nails.
Thank everyone for listening. And we just started an Instagram page, so I just wanted to promote that. It's at truth.camp. So follow there, and we'll add some different stories and stuff on that. But
Heck yeah.
we will be back for another episode soon. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.